Hello and welcome to Logic 1. Okay, so it's a new series, a slightly different time than usual. But yeah, this can be logic. So logic is obviously, pretty important. So logic is the subject matter of an argument and may be applied to a wide breadth of different topics. So yeah, it's really a very important subject and can be applied to almost any topic at all. But argument is the main thing. It's about arguing things of almost any nature. Or in fact, it is any nature, I think. But there may be exceptions, which offhand I can't think of. But the question anyway is to how to discern a good argument from a bad argument. So yeah, so what makes a good argument a sound argument? Some might say, you know, an argument that makes sense, whereas a bad argument, which is an argument which is devoid of meaning, which doesn't follow, which has its roots in misgivings, or which has its conclusion in bad interpretation. So, logically, an argument consists of a sentence or a small set of sentences that lead up to and might or might not justify some other sentence. So that's two parts. So the argument is going to consist of two parts: the premise, or perhaps the premises. It might be a 1-to-1 ratio. It might be multiple premises. It might be 5. But then we've got the conclusion, and the conclusion we say is 1. So we could say it's maybe a single or multiple inputs with one output. We could say there's a series of reasons why this must be the case for this particular thing. So there's lots of different ways to look at it, but generally you've got these premises and you've got the conclusion. And with premises and conclusion, the premise or premises, I'll just say it in the plural form now. It makes it's a little easier. They're going to give the reasons. Some might say information to get to this conclusion, to get to this. And the conclusion may well, and will often, if you can imagine, say, a chemistry experiment where you have aim at the beginning and you have the conclusion, often in that conclusion you're going to find that you've put the aim in there. You're gonna go back to the aim. You're going to say if the aim is to find out what color litmus paper turns when you put it in a big vat of acid, you're going to mention that in your conclusion. There's no way you're not going to be mentioning that. So there's something there. Anyway, so what are premises then? Well, we could put there are multiple words we could put in, but the words we're going to go for are because, since, and for. Now, because of course can sometimes be written as 2 dots above 1 dot. With the 1 dot being the bisector of the 2 dots. Well, that line is the bisector, I suppose. But anyway, the point is, what I wanted to look at, and what I wanted to look at were both the definitions and also the corpus analysis. So obviously, the corpus analysis is what usage in books. Because obviously, books, aside from like the last 10 years or something, books are really the way that everything has been done. Well, I suppose you could go back a bit further than that, maybe. But anyway, the point is not if there was any difference within that period from telephone network till about 10 years ago, then probably wasn't that relevant, or it may become increasingly relevant over time. But certainly it wouldn't have been that relevant for many, many years, probably at least till sort of 60s and 70s. So the three words we're going to talk about for these premises. So we've got because, since, and for. So I looked these up, and I've looked in a variety of different dictionaries, and then I've gone and looked at the corpus, looked at their usage. It's not major statistics, but I just wanted to, just write a very brief sentence about what the graph looked like. If I could notice anything particularly interesting, and yeah, look, this terminology is not, I'm just making it up basically. So, yeah, so you need to take it with a pinch of salt. So, first one we've got because. So, because is agree in implying a reason for an occurrence or action. So yeah, so like I said, I am actually going to, in the next episode, I'm going to think about sentences that use all these things, but I don't really want to focus on that now. I want to just look at the actual words. So that's what because means. Agree in implying a reason for an occurrence or action. So there's a reason. As you can see that cause. So maybe that's like, the thing I thought of was Thomas Aquinas' first cause. So, yeah. If we look at the corpus analysis of that, we can see increasing usage from 1900. So because is doing well, we can see it's continually doing well. It's performing well. No signs of letting up. It just keeps on. It keeps on improving, and yeah, and in fact, it's out of all the words we're going to speak of today, it's the one which is doing the best. It seems to have no problems with just keeps on keeping on. So then we have since, and that means for the reason that. And I actually looked that up, and it's interesting because it's originally from the word sithence, which is interesting because there's this word thence, and there's also the word hence as well. And hence is actually going to be part of the ones we're going to talk about in the conclusion in a minute. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, so that since is for the reason that. So that's what it means, and it's got interesting, and it's just interesting that I wouldn't normally mention the etymology of the actual words, but because the etymology has since happened to be, see, I've used because again there. That's the thing. You've got to be very careful because you do use because a lot. Well, I used because a lot, and it's because the increasing usage from 1900. But yeah, I suppose if I focus on that every time. It would be like a cross-examination of myself constantly. So I will probably mention it, but what can you do about it? So so it's since for the reason that. So it's originally from the word sithence. So that is an interesting one, I think. And yeah, if we look at that, we can see that since is quite an interesting thing. And this is just a word that I made up, spiked plateau. So what I mean by that is not like like a bell sort of shape, just more of a spiky shape, but not quite a spike. But then again, it's not like just a smooth curve either. And that happened between 1950 to 1970. So yeah, so that was. So I mean that's an interesting one, and and of course you can draw reasons for that, with what's going on in academia and stuff like that. So there's that. Now the next one is for, with the object or purpose of. Now, because the thing about for is because for is used a lot in programming. I suppose it probably would. It may actually interfere with some of the results, but. Yeah, but the main thing that you sort of note was a small rise in 1910. Then it was fairly consistently level. So with the object or purpose of. But yeah, so really what we can look at is the reason. What if the question is what is the reason, and then you could say because ... since ... for ... yeah, that's the reason. Okay, so now we move on to the next section, which is going to be words like therefore, so, hence, and thus signal that a conclusion is about to be stated. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually see that this is starting to, there's some kind of time thing going on with the conclusion. So it's the conclusion saying this is coming later. This is not coming at the same time as the premise. This is not coming simultaneously or even before. It is coming after. So that's why a conclusion comes later. That's why it's aim method conclusion. That's why it's not aim conclusion method. So that's an important thing. So always have this idea that we're going to go through things in this certain way. Thus, for instance, and we'll talk about that one in a moment. But anyway, the point is, if we look at therefore, now therefore was very interesting because obviously, therefore is for that reason. Consequently, so it's consequently because, and obviously, and that was actually, I think that's an important word in logic anyway. But so con and then sequently. So it's an interesting construction of the word. Interesting with therefore, it's not something I was actually aware of, but when I did the corpus analysis of that, it was a very dramatic drop. And in fact, they've all had dramatic drops. Well, okay, well, obviously, as you can see, it's not all dramatic drops, but therefore and thus are dramatic drops, and so and hence they've all been dropping. So obviously, this kind of this idea of coming to a conclusion has really been going. It's been going downhill. And so so you can, and that's the thing. Okay. Anyway, the point is, so therefore is for that reason. Consequently, okay. So that's therefore. Then we have so, and so is with the aim that, in order that. So is interesting because some of these words it's difficult to tell whether they should be premises or conclusions. So has had a steady drop, and interestingly, so that's had a steady drop from 1900. So hence is next one. That's from now, used after a period of time. So hence is a good one. As I mentioned before with sithence, it's interesting that thence and hence dynamic, and that could be actually quite interesting. Of course, this will depend on what sentences you use and how you do things. But thence and hence, these are all interesting words to look at. Hence, though, is the one which is so from now. So and that's often what people say. Hence, used after a period of time. So we're going forward. Henceward bound or something. But anyway, that's not really. This doesn't actually make any sense. So anyway, the point is that's had a steady drop from 1800. However, I did notice that it was interspersed with small peaks every kind of, and it seemed to be kind of regular small peaks actually. Yeah, regular small peaks. So hence. Even though, in fact, it's the only one really, which, as they all fall off, probably to, ridiculously small amounts. Hence, at least, it has a few years where it just, it just goes forward for a little bit before then, just following, I mean, you can't really say much about things. It's just like drop. But anyway, the point is that's what hence does. Anyway, the next one is thus. So thus, of course, in the manner now being indicated or exemplified. So in this way, thus. So it's thus da 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 da. So that's how we can say thus. And again, unfortunately, thus has. It suffered the same fate as therefore. It did suffer it slightly later than therefore, but regardless, it is still there, and it is dramatically dropping. So, and there were no real signs, no no signs of hope for thus. So that's going to conclude everything that I've talked about today, and so I've gone over all the premises for logic. I was trying to anyway, that's the end of this. So goodbye.